their chancellors, but I don't have enough time to go through all of the chancellors that they had. We have one budget, that's what we're committed to, strong fiscal rules, and we'll stick to them, unlike the party opposite. The then Foreign Secretary came to this House to say why he was starting negotiations and what he wanted to achieve. Heard herself, the independent advisor. He found, as she well knows, there was no breach of the code. And he said the aim was to, quote, ensure the continued effective operation of the base. That is precisely what this deal has delivered.
Remember when Keir Starmer promised a new era of honest politics? Fast forward to today's PMQs, and we're witnessing a spectacle that's anything but honest. In a heated exchange that left jaws on the floor, Starmer found himself cornered, struggling to defend his integrity as accusations of lies and broken promises flew. What caused this epic meltdown? And can Labour's leader recover from this devastating blow? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. Remember when Keir Starmer stood before the Labour Party painting a picture of a new era in British politics? His promise of honesty and integrity was meant to be a breath of fresh air, a stark contrast to the perceived dishonesty of his predecessors. But today's Prime Minister's Questions PMQs session has left many wondering if Starmer's promise was nothing more than empty rhetoric. As the session kicked off, Starmer's usual confident demeanour seemed to waver. The Prime Minister wasted no time in pressing him on a range of issues, each question chipping away at the Labour leader's carefully crafted image. The transformation was palpable.
They've opposed all of our measures to stabilise the economy and promote growth. They're back to the magic money tree. She wants all the benefits of the budget and housing, vital to stability, vital to growth. And we've got an ironclad commitment to our fiscal rules. And she will welcome, no doubt, the inflation figures from this morning. But she can't say how she's going to pay for them. They haven't changed. They're still economic vandals and fantasists. Imagine where we'd be if they were still in charge. But contrast that with the party opposite. They weren't brave enough in government to take those difficult decisions.
Gone was the assured former prosecutor, replaced by a politician struggling to find his footing. One of the most glaring moments came when Starmer was questioned about Tulip Siddique's resignation amid a corruption probe. His responses were far from the straight-talking clarity we've come to expect. Instead, they were vague and evasive, leaving more questions than answers. It was a far cry from the man who once promised to usher in an era of transparency. As the Prime Minister continued his relentless questioning, Starmer's discomfort became increasingly evident. He shifted uneasily in his seat, his usual confidence replaced by what can only be described as a deer-in-headlights look. It was a stark visual representation of a leader caught off guard, struggling to maintain his composure under the weight of scrutiny. The Prime Minister didn't let up, pressing Starmer on what he termed a horrible deal with Mauritius and a budget that's currently crippling the country. With each query, Starmer seemed to retreat further into vague platitudes and non-answers. It was a performance that left many in the chamber and undoubtedly many watching at home, questioning the substance behind Starmer's promises. Perhaps most telling was Starmer's inability to provide clear, concise answers to direct questions. This evasiveness stood in stark contrast to his previous assertions of transparency and honesty. As the session wore on, the gap between Starmer's words and actions became increasingly apparent, leaving a sour taste in the mouths of those who had placed their faith in his leadership. By the end of the PMQs, the promise of honest politics that Starmer had so boldly proclaimed seemed to ring hollow. His performance raised serious questions about his ability to lead effectively and maintain the trust of both his party and the public. It's a stark reminder that in politics, actions speak louder than words.
We inherited a situation where the long-term operation of a vital military base was under threat because of legal challenges. But we have an ironclad commitment to our fiscal rules. We can't just tax our way out of the problems that they left us, which is why we put in place tough. They were howling at the spending decisions. They wouldn't take them. They flatlined the economy, a mini budget that crashed the economy, worst cost of living crisis in living history, and they left a £22 billion black hole. that they did not have the courage to take, which left us in the mess in the first place. When it comes to tax, she knows very well the limits of what I can say from this dispatch box.
And promises unfulfilled can quickly erode even the most carefully built reputations. If promises were pounds, Keir Starmer would be a billionaire. But after today's disastrous showing at PMQs, his political bank account might be overdrawn. The man once hailed as Labour's knight in shining armour now finds himself fumbling for answers and dodging simple questions. How did it come to this? Starmer's rise to Labour leadership was nothing short of meteoric. He was the steady hand, the voice of reason meant to guide Labour out of the turbulent Corbyn era. But today, we witness a leader struggling to keep his head above water as the Prime Minister's relentless questioning exposed a pattern of inconsistencies in Starmer's positions. The exchange grew heated as Starmer faced intense scrutiny regarding his party's economic plans. When pressed on his Chancellor's promise not to raise taxes, Starmer's response was less than inspiring. Instead of defending his own party's economic strategy, he deflected, accusing the government of creating a cost of living crisis. It was a textbook example of political evasion, leaving many to wonder if Starmer can't defend his own policies, who will? But the real fireworks came when the Prime Minister brought up the secret deal to surrender British territory. Starmer's response was weak, failing to address the serious implications of such a move. The Prime Minister's words hung in the air. There is no way that we should be giving up British territory in Chos. This deal has delivered. Starmer's inability to effectively counter this claim left many questioning his judgment and his commitment to protecting British interests. As the session wore on, Starmer's responses became increasingly defensive. Gone was the confident leader who promised a new era of honest politics. In his place stood a man on the back foot, resorting to attacking the government's record rather than defending his own positions.
Their chancellors, but I don't have enough time to go through all of the chancellors that they had. We have one budget, that's what we're committed to, strong fiscal rules, and we'll stick to them, unlike the party opposite. The then Foreign Secretary came to this House to say why he was starting negotiations and what he wanted to achieve. Heard herself, the independent advisor. He found, as she well knows, there was no breach of the code. And he said the aim was to, quote, ensure the continued effective operation of the base. That is precisely what this deal has delivered.
It was a far cry from the forensic mind that once commanded respect across the political spectrum. By the end of PMQs, Starmer's credibility had taken a severe hit. His inability to provide clear answers or defend his positions left many questioning his fitness to lead. The session was characterized by a barrage of questions that left him floundering, each evasion and deflection chipping away at the trust he had worked so hard to build. Today's PMQs wasn't just a bad day at the office for Keir Starmer, it was a stark revelation of a leader drowning in his own rhetoric. As the dust settles, voters are left with a bitter taste in their mouths, watching their once promising opposition leader struggle to keep his head above water. The question on everyone's lips: if Starmer can't hold his own in the parliamentary arena, how on earth can he be expected to lead the country? History doesn't paint a pretty picture for opposition leaders who falter during crucial parliamentary sessions. Starmer's performance today might just be the beginning of a political death spiral if he can't turn things around quickly. With upcoming political events like the next budget announcement and local elections looming on the horizon, Starmer's leadership is about to face its toughest test yet. If Labour fails to make a strong showing, it could be the final nail in Starmer's political coffin. The coming weeks will be make or break for both Starmer and Labour. Can they pull off a miraculous recovery? Or are we witnessing the beginning of the end for Starmer's leadership?